Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about a new concept, that is the concept of coherence. And we're going to see how it is different from another concept, a concept that we dealt with yesterday, the concept of cohesion. So we're going to see how coherence is different from cohesion. Coherence deals with how different elements fit well together in a text. Coherence is not something that exists in words or sentences, but is something that people confer upon or attribute to text. This is because it is people who make sense of what they read and hear, because at the end of the day, it is people who interpret text. So how can people do that? How can they attribute coherence to text? In order to fill the gaps that may exist in any text, language users need to use their knowledge about the world in order to create meaningful connections that are not explicitly expressed or directly communicated by the words or sentences constituting the text. So people try to fill these gaps in any text, they read or in any talk they hear, in order to be able to understand these texts and conversation. This gap-filling process is more evident in casual conversations. So let's take an example and see how coherence can be attributed to a conversation. So this is the example we have. Here we have a conversation between two people, a husband and a wife. In this conversation, those two people, the husband and the wife, use very short sentences, very fragmentary sentences that do not really communicate much information about the context of use. So let's see that conversation. Here we have the wife. The wife says, "That's the telephone." The husband replies, "I'm in the bath." And then the wife responds, "Okay." In this conversation, there are certainly no cohesive devices, and on the face of it, this conversation does not look very cohesive, because using the information contained in these sentences, is not enough to reach interpretation. So the question now is, how does each of the participants in that short conversation manage to make sense of what the other says? Those participants seem to reach an acceptable interpretation by drawing on their previous knowledge, their knowledge about the world, their knowledge about the conversational actions performed by the speakers in each interaction or in similar interactions. So, how people can coordinate a response to something. Thus, the interpretation of each conversation can be analyzed in terms of this conversation can be analyzed in terms of three successive actions, which can be described as follow. So we have, "That's the telephone." This expression or this sentence means that the wife indirectly requests the husband to perform an action, and that action is related to picking up the phone. And we're talking about landline phone, not mobile phone. Landline phones that need somebody to pick it up and answer. And then the other sentence in the conversation, "I'm in the bath." The husband said, "I'm in the bath." It means that the husband provides a reason why he cannot comply with this request. And finally, we have the expression "okay." Means that the wife accepts that reason, and expectedly, she will perform the action of picking up the phone herself. So this example shows that language users do not only rely on cohesive ties in the context to reach understanding, but they also draw on their general knowledge about how texts and conversations are structured and used. This is why we say coherence, unlike cohesion of course, is not a property of text or conversation, but rather a property that language users attribute to text and conversation based on their general knowledge about how language should be used across different situations. So this is how coherence works. We attribute coherence to sentences and expressions in conversations. Now, let's move to another section in the chapter. The section that deals with something that we call conversation analysis, which apparently focuses on conversation. Any conversation involves turns or exchanges for all the participants in that conversation. This means that any conversation is structured in terms of turns taken by different participants in that conversation. So what is turn taking? What does it mean? Turn taking refers to the way in which each speaker takes a turn in conversation, in which he or she contribute to that conversation. In turn taking process, the participant wait until one speaker indicates that he or she has finished. This can be usually done by signaling what we call a completion point, which is often indicated by a pause or a specific intonation pattern. The pause means I'm done. It is your turn to take the floor in the conversation. Now you can talk because I'm done. This is my way of indicating I'm waiting for a reply from you. Speakers can use different conversation strategies to organize turns or tell each other when to take the floor in conversation, when to speak, when to reply. So speakers may also extend their turns by holding the floor through the conversation by avoiding having normal completion points, namely pauses. They don't really pause in order to hold the floor, in order to prevent others from contributing or interrupting them. So how can they do that? They can do that by producing what is called filled pauses. They fill the pause to avoid giving the chance to others to contribute in the conversation. So they use something like expressions like these in order to avoid losing the turn or the floor, just in case they have a possible hesitation. These strategies of turn taking help organize the participants' contribution to the conversation and help negotiate the intricate business of social interaction through language. This helps. These strategies also help negotiate the roles played by each participant. In each conversation, turn taking is partially prescribed by convention, and turns can be organized in terms of adjacency pairs. If you remember, last year we talked about adjacency pairs. So, for example, question answer is an adjacency pair. Whenever you ask a question, you expect an answer. Apology acceptance or maybe rejection is another type of adjacency pair. Adjacency means together or nearby something, nearby something. So a question expects, whenever you ask a question, you expect an answer. Whenever you apologize, you expect an acceptance of an apology or maybe a rejection. Whenever you ask for some kind of a help, you expect, assistance. So this is what we mean by adjacency pair. Something that we say that brings with it an expected reply. Therefore, conversation typically follow a predictable format depending on the social situation. Each social situation has a specific format that we should follow. When we buy something from the store, there is some kind of a format to, negotiate the price, ask for the price, pay for it, and get the thing in return, and then you thank the salesman or saleswoman. In a doctor-patient conversation, there is some format for the conversation between the doctor and the patient, etc. So in any social context, in any situation, there is a specific format, specific expected format with an expected turns and adjacency pairs. So this is how conversation analysis can be done by following how turns are taken by the participants, how the conversation is structured in terms of adjacency pairs. We'll stop here today and we will continue next